Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. What's one thing that makes your program different? Hard sometimes for one thing, so I'll open it up to what are some things?
Well, I'm just going to go to the most recent thing. We had a couple of coaches at practice today, and they were like over there taking down writing down these terms, and they were like, "What do you mean when you said this? What do you mean?" I think it's our language, our terminology. I want it to be unique. We don't use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to identify players. We don't use point guard, 2 guard, shooting guard, 3 guard, power forward, post player. We have locks, rabbits, dragons, and rackers. And the reason we do that is because we get to explain exactly what a racker is. It's a point guard to most people. They'd say, "Oh, that's your point guard." I'm saying, "No, it's our racker," because we're asking our point guard, our racker, to do very, very specific things to us. So, I borrowed this term from Buzz Williams. It's called words we use. That's our dictionary is words we use. And it's the words only we use. Like, it may not make any sense to these coaches that had come in from another state to watch us practice. They're like, I couldn't even understand what y'all were saying. Well, that's because you don't understand our language. And it makes it unique to our kids. It forces them to maybe relearn some things. And there's an initial shock. I think our freshmen sometimes are a little bit overwhelmed by it. We warn them coming into recruiting, that if you're not prepared for it, don't come here, go someplace else that's going to be the same thing over and over that you've always done. And because, again, if I ask you to write down the 10 best qualities of a point guard, and I asked 10 other coaches to do it, I bet we'd end up with a list of 70 or 75 things out of 100. We'd have some overlap, but our order would be drastically out of order. So I don't want to count on what somebody else has told them a point guard is, or what commentator they heard on a broadcast say, "Oh, she's the consummate point guard." And they go, "Well, I want to be the consummate point guard, so I'm going to do those things." Well, those things don't work for us. So I think our language and the way we talk to each other, we're very intentional. Like we have word battles sometimes, like what's the best form of the word? We don't use the word motivation around here, because motivation is something, if you look it up and you drill it down, that's somebody doing something to get a response from you that they desire. Inspiration is the better word. I would rather be inspirational than motivational. Inspirational means they do it on their own. That's the better form of the word. Now, I'm not saying there's not a time you have to motivate. You do. But, man, if you can be inspirational over motivational, which one would you choose?
Yeah.
So we've done a bracket. Like we put brackets up there. We had a 60-14 bracket of what words we use. What are the most important words that we use? And the final four has been the same, because we have posters of it everywhere in our building. But trust, talent, time, and tolerance wins out every year. That's our final four words every year. And those become our pillars, or your whatever you want to use, your program theme or mottos or whatever, standards. But we get very specific in the words we intentionally choose to use, and we call each other out on it when we mess up. I will still revert back to my playing days from my coach, who called that spot on the floor in between the block and the corner. He called it the short corner, So I will say, "Get over there, short corner." And they're like going, "Oh, that's not what you mean, the rabbit hole?" I'm like, "Oh, sorry." Yes, go to the rabbit hole. So I don't know. I think that's, if every program has unique things they do. I think they're all probably, beg, borrowed, steal tweets from, Facebook effect from something they've seen. But I can honestly say, if I ever go to see somebody and their positions are called racker, rabbit, dragons, and locks, then they've seen some stuff we've talked about. People have changed it. We've got a local team here that uses Top Gun names. Same positions, but they made them cooler. So I think there's definitely some carryover value, but there's a lot of things in our program that are very similar to everybody else. But if you came to our practice, I think that'd be probably the first thing you would notice would be the words that you hear repeatedly. The phrases are very specific. We try to keep them as simplified as one syllable as possible and short. memorable, made to stick so they can remember them, and specific to us. We try not to introduce, new ones unless they are important and have impact. It's not just something we read on Twitter or saw some other program do, and it has to be specific to us, our team, and that specific year.
I mean, we want our concepts to be just so ingrained in our players so that when they're playing, it's more instinctual. They don't have instinctive. They don't have to think about what they're doing and where and what it's called. And as coaches, it gives us the ability to be more efficient with our teaching,
Yep.
be able to speak less. I think that's the challenge. And I love that you talked about the words that you say. I had the honor of getting to direct for PGC for 5 summers.
Mm-hmm.
And Dick DeVenzio was the founder, was a master of sticky language that is talking about something that probably has 8, like the porch, like the like it has all of those things. But then I think the challenge going back to is for coaches to write down the concepts that they really want their players to know, streamline those so that in a singular practice, you're not hearing 3 or 4 words for the same action, because that's confusing.
It is. And, you mentioned PGC, they've carried that on with the guys now too. They're the same way. The things that they're talking about, it's the same, that Dick started, the things that are important. But no, I think just that attention to it and the intentionality of it, it's easy to complicate things. Anybody, there's a statement somebody famous said, any idiot can complicate things. It takes genius to simplify it. And it's the greatest compliment I ever hear around is, man, stuff looks so simple, but it's really hard to guard. Or your concepts, your systems seem very simplistic. That's the greatest compliment, I think. Somebody that thinks like we do can take. Not other people want it to be complicated. They want it to be, but I think in the way that we're going about it, that's one of those things you look for. That's a piece of evidence that it is getting out there, that kids are carrying it on. And if they can't speak it back, if they can't teach it to a freshman, or they can't, one of the things I've done, I actually did it at a PGC clinic one time. I had one of my former players was there in attendance, and I brought her up and I said, see if you can explain this in the same words. And like when she did it, it was like almost word for word how we would defend ball screens. And it was a terminology and a language. And we actually went out and brought in somebody that was in the lobby that did not speak English, didn't speak the language. And in about a minute and a half, we were able to teach them how to guard ball screens just by letting them watch. So it's got to be simple. You got to be able to be repeatable. And to me, when you get that, and that's a sign that you've done some learning, that you don't have to tell a kid 1,000 times. They already know.
Coach, if you don't mind, I'd love to share a game that it was PGC. So I did the point guard college course, which was the flagship, the original by Dick DeVenzio. One of my favorite games that we played was called Changing Defenses. So you have an offensive team. This is a challenge. Really, what it did is challenge me to think of, does my zone offense against a 2-3 or against a 1-3-1 or 3-2 or against man-to-man, do my offenses, each of them have 3 to 4 concepts that my players know and that they can go right into? Because I think a lot of us are guilty of, man, we've got 10 to 15 things that we really want them to accomplish in any possession. So in this game, real quick, you got your team of 5 at half court in a circle, and I would take a microphone around because we have the whole gym going, and then teams on the baseline looking like cutthroat. The first team comes on. If it's man to man, they line up across the free throw line, all of them. If it's a 1-3-1, defender came up to the top of the key, and then if it was a 2-3, 2 guys came up. So it was very easy to see what the defense was, and then they had 10 to 15 seconds the first round as a group to come up with the 3 to 4 concepts and say them clearly. We got to stand over there. No. Like, you got to get dangerous, and you got to build your triangles, and you got to engage 2 and hunt the paint and make the ball work. Like, so, and then the moment if they didn't, kick them off, new team, but the next team had to do a different defense than the one before. If they actually got it right and they scored, they got to stay on offense, new defense, and then the next round would be, okay, you take only the few people that were speaking and say, you can't talk and you can't talk. You make the others, and then
you fouled out.
and then ultimately you haven't said a word all day. The third round, you got all four of them go. And anything wrong. I love getting to see, just in that environment, strangers from all across, one, communicate well, precisely, and then what we want them. So I took it back home and I realized I don't have concepts. So it's been one of the best games for us. Yeah.
No, it's great. And that, I love, or not love, well, I love when this moment comes up. I always get coaches goes, I don't have very good decision makers. I said, well, let me see a copy of your practice schedule. Well, you didn't give them a chance to make any decisions.
It's all scripted. Yeah.
It's all they're doing is they're actors.
Yeah.
And you're a director. You don't have one thing in here where they're allowed to be decisive. And they're like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Well, what are some drills you do? And what are some scenarios you set up in your practices where, they're allowed to make mistakes? That's the other part. I have a list of things that I look for on people I try to schedule. If I see a team running for punishment, I'm going to try to schedule them. That's one of my signs. If I ever go to a gym and because a team does something wrong, they have to get on the line and run, I'm like, okay, let's get them on the schedule. We're going to beat them in time. We're going to beat them over the course of time, because if a kid's never allowed to make a decision without having to run or do something, they're not going to try. They're going to try. They're not going to stretch. It's Wayne Gretzky principle. He used to trip in practice all the time.
Yeah.
Everybody laugh at him. And it was because he was trying to do things faster in a different way. And you're going to fall sometimes. You've got to be allowed to be able to make a mistake without it costing you playing time or any of that stuff. And if you don't set it up in your practices, now you're just relying on the game time to be when they have to make decisions.
Bold strategy to experiment then.
It's very bold. I mean, it's just like, why are we going to experiment against Tennessee? Why don't we do it against each other when nobody's watching?
But letting them have the environment where it's okay to fail right now. We call it bike riding time. Guys, remember back when you were little and you were learning to ride a bike, what did you do when you fall down? Did you do push-ups? Did you run? Did you go inside? Did you quit that day? No, you got right back on and you try to go a little bit farther. I think that's the idea or the environment we want to create in practice.
It's got to be. If you're involved, if you're interested in improvement, if you're just interested in getting the 2 hours of your practice down so you can go home and move on to your next part of your day, then again, go ahead and get out of coaching if you don't mind. Make room for the rest.
It's also an argument. Yeah, it's also an argument against. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
It's exciting. Again, getting to talk with you. It's like I've been waiting since TABC to do this. So no,
we got to do it.
Yeah, it's also kind of the idea of being careful about too much 5-on-0, where everything looks great, but there's no decisions that are being made. And then, when you go into a game situation and you haven't given guys an opportunity to actually find the reasons and fail and figure out what happened, what works for them. And, you're going back to what you hear coaches say in games.
I just think we're all too concerned with sometimes how it looks in practice, that if somebody were up there watching us, they're going to go, man, that looked like good practice. I don't care what anybody at our practice thinks other than me and our players and our staff. Like, it's all set up for a reason. If you want to understand it, then come watch us practice every day. Don't just show up on, the day you decided to come in and watch. It's more than that. There's more pieces to it. And, I think it's messy. I think, Fran Priscilla, I have a little book I carry around, and one of Fran's comments was, practice chaos creates game calmness. And if your practices are all scripted and all got to look, there's nothing pretty about, a knockdown drag out where your two best players are fouled out, and you're not going to have them ready. And I'd rather look good in games than I had in practice. So we try to make all our mistakes out here. We do a lot more coaching in practice than we do in game. We try to manage the clock and manage situations in games. I've been criticized for not being more energetic or more emotional during games. But I think they should come to practice. I invite those people. That's where I'm doing that. And in a game is when we need to manage the situation. We're not trying to cure all of our sicknesses in a media timeout. We're trying to get to that what's next, and we'll fix the rest of it in practice. So I think practice is that time, and if you don't utilize those times, if you're just trying to fill, if you're putting in, star drill, 3-man weave, if you're doing things that you don't translate,
Fake fundamentals by Brian McCormick, right?
Fake fundamentals, and you're filling it. You're it's just, to me, that's a disservice to your team. And I'm glad the internet's out there for that reason, because a lot of kids can now watch other practices and they can see that it doesn't have to be that way. I didn't have that growing up.
Yeah.
I trusted that what my coach was doing was the right thing for us, and the right thing for me, and the right thing for us as a team. But I think there's a lot more pressure on us now as coaches to make sure that we're utilizing those minutes, not hours, but every single minute. And I think if you do that, what you get is you get a group of kids that they know you're not going to waste their time on stuff that doesn't help them win a game or help them become a better player. Some of that can be in the off season. It doesn't necessarily always happen to in season, but the time that you're out there with them, you need to be very solutional in the talk that you're giving them. The feedback's got to be almost immediate nowadays. Another thing that I always look for is people that say, yeah, we got in the film room yesterday after last night's game and we got a lot better. Well, if it took you till that next day to get into the film room, you're behind us, because our kids are going to get 10 clips to their phone within 15 minutes of the game being over. You got to close that feedback loop. These kids, think about this for you. I challenge adults in our clinics all the time. Pick your phone up and open up a website. How long do you give it to open before you go, screw it, I'm just going to the next one? 5 seconds? 7 seconds?
Coach, that thing better not pause at all.
No, if you get the spinner,
I'm out.
My 2-year-old son, he's trying to find Coco Melon on Netflix, on YouTube, and if it spins, he's to the next one. Up swipe, up.
Yeah.
If it doesn't open immediately, we got a problem. So if I hear, oh yeah, we got in the film room that next day and we really hunkered down and we got better. Oh, awesome. What are y'all doing this time on November 15th next year? We'd love to play. That's a sign, because that doesn't even take technology anymore. Used to, it took some technology. Every single person out here listening has the technology to be able to provide that to your players. And if you don't close that feedback loop, you've lost teaching moments. If you wait till the next day, if you have to look at it on film, not saying there's not a time where you don't go back and learn something from film that you impart to your team, but you better be correcting behaviors that you want corrected as they happen.
Yeah.
In real time. If you're waiting around, or you're waiting until you've seen it again or confirmed, then your challenges are other things, not what you really think they are.
In my opinion, team-wide film sessions, they should be rare, and they also should be celebrations where we're just, we watch highlight films before games because I want my guys going into battle thinking of and not battle. I don't like that. I don't like
battle's okay. It's okay.
There's times where I'm like, this isn't war. It's a game.
No, but it's funny you mentioned. Go ahead. I'm going to interrupt you because we had the commander of the ground forces unit in front of us, and I specifically was at Washington, and we used dog tags as a reward system. And I asked him, I said, do you take that as offensive when we say we're giving and I said, do you take it as an offense when we say we're going to battle, we're going to war? They said, absolutely not. We love it. The people that are in it do not take offense to it. So but I was like you, I was cautious.
That makes me feel better, because I say that quite a bit.
Yeah, I do too. But these are the people that have physically done it. I've never served.
Yeah.
So I don't feel, but he said, Coach, we take it. I take that as a compliment. And in my world, you go on using those dog tags to celebrate that with your kids. That's a cool thing. But we ask, just don't bring up with me. Don't use the word chess match to describe basketball. Don't use chess match. You hear it all the time in commentary.
Coach, if it is a chess match, I'm lost, because to me it's the game is, one, just like with shot selection, we want them to have a next mentality.
Yeah.
Right. So when I coach an offensive possession, once that's done, I'm not thinking 3 or 4 back or 3 or 4 ahead. That's just me.
This was Annie Duke, the great poker player. I don't know if you ever watch ESPN poker late at night. She's one of the top poker players in the world, but she's an author now. And she talks about thinking in bets and making decisions. And she said we had her during COVID on a Zoom, and she was phenomenal with us. And it came up. She goes, it's not chess. You guys, as basketball coaches and most sports, you're playing poker. I'm like, okay, where's this going? And you could kind of see us all, how it was on Zoom. You could see everybody kind of lean in and go, all right, where's she going with this? And she said, if it was a chess match, you'd all have the same pieces. Wait a second. That never happens in basketball.
Yeah.
Never.
My hand is different than your hand. That's good.
But my hand could beat your hand if I play it right. But in chess, and the statistics on it are crazy if you start looking it up, you dive deep into it. And she inspired me to dive deep into that statement. The better player, like if you just look at the rankings, the better player wins like 95% of the time, especially if they get the first move. That's not true in basketball. So it's not a chess match. We don't have the same pieces. The other part about it is, if I'm playing you in a chess match right now, I can physically see everything you're doing. There's no secrets.
Yeah.
But when we're playing basketball, there's all kinds of hidden information. I don't know what you worked on the day before. You might come out in a box in one, or a triangle in two, or a rhombus, some other geographic shape. I swear a team played a rhombus and won on us one time. But the information's hidden, and it's not in chess. So, I just think it's said all the time. I have a commentator, Debbie Antonelli, who's one of the best commentators on the women's side. She and I have a little contest. We text each other every time we hear somebody utilize that term. So you'll hear it now, and you're going to go, oh yeah, it's not a chess match, it's poker, man. So
that's good. So for a high school coach, maybe like myself, where I'm the only full-time guy at Faith, my assistant coaches are part-time. I'm very thankful for any amount of time that they can give to our players in our program, but I'm also careful never to overload them, since this isn't their job.
Yeah. Right.
For me, I go home after a game and I'm statting, but with Huddle, like you said, I could clip things quickly to send them, besides just makes and misses of a player, which would to me seem lazy just to send them that. What are some things that you would recommend that maybe, and it could be system or style based, but what would you send players?
Yeah, and I think it varies from what you're going to expect. We always say that you're either coaching it or tolerating it. It's what you're not going to tolerate at that point in time. A big thing for me specifically, anytime I catch, I always try to send them 5 good, 5 bad, and 5 good. I'm going to sandwich it that way.
Yeah.
They're going to get about a 2-to-1 ratio, good to bad. And on the ones in the middle, the ones that I want improvement on, it's usually an opportunity where they didn't do something. It's not that they can't, it's that they didn't. We try to drill everything down and explain it so well that once I've explained to you, this is what we want. The only 2 answers are you can't or you won't. So I hope they come back with me and say, well, coach, it's really, I just didn't. Okay, well, why didn't you then? Because nobody wants to say they can't do it. And if they're saying they won't do it, they're going to be in defiant. So they do want to come back to you. So I look for those didn't moments. We want you to, basket cut when you're at the top of the fence and we drive it at you. You should run a 45 cut. Right? You know that. Yeah, coach. We've talked about it. We've done it 1,000 times. We drilled it. So I say, well, why didn't you? You can't or you won't. And they don't want to ever answer that question. So I try to find 5 clips of that. 5 can't or won't clips. And then we discuss them. And then what you get out of that is why they didn't do it. Well, yeah, I thought this, or I was tired. Okay, well, then I need to get you a break before that happens next time. Fair enough. Nobody wants to say that one either. But it makes them think through that. Like, you can't just wait for, in a team film session, you're just going to sit there. Nobody's going to say anything and you go on to the next clip. But when it's me one-on-one, I wouldn't send more than 5 clips. I mean, if it came down to it, I'd send 5 good and then 5 ones that I want to be able to have a conversation with them about. But you can do it with, go to your tech class. I bet you could find somebody that would be willing for a couple of pieces of pizza and a team T-shirt to clip some stuff for you. You'll be shocked at how good people can be at things that know nothing about basketball.
And that's a good nugget. That's a good nugget to enlist other people.
Yeah,
to help, because I'm still trying to get over being a control freak and not wanting to delegate or to just do it myself. But that's a good nugget right there.
There's a lot of people on your campus that are really, really talented in areas. Some of the best projects that we've ever done as a team have come from somebody that never even seen a basketball game before. They're a master at Excel and they were able to sort this. And we had a student at Xavier when I was an assistant coach at Xavier. We were big on lineup efficiencies. My head coach, I work for Kevin McGuff, who's at Ohio State now, and we just sitting around one day talking, saying, "Man, I wish there was some way we could just stat which team group of 5 was our best 5." I said, "Well, we can. It's just going to take a lot of work." I said, "Well, let me go to work on that." So we did. We enlisted a few people just from a statistics class, and they came in and wrote a little program up for us, and were able to take our game call sheet that the announcers do into the game stats, and they just click and drag it. And now this guy runs a website that I think like 8,000 different programs, high school, colleges, pros use it. He got a job with Philadelphia 76ers right out of, he was still in college because he had developed this program that did what we wanted it to do. Now lineup efficiencies are everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's point and click done, if you put the right information in there. So, it's kind of going back to what we started out talking about. You can't be good at everything. You can't be great at everything, but pick out 2 or 3 things that you really care about that really drive success within your team and your program, and be the best at those. Like, I know every lineup that we have, how many minutes they played together, how many possessions they played together, the result of all those possessions. And to me, that's valuable because I can't explain how sometimes our best lineup is not made up of our 5 best players. But it's very rare that if we were to rank our best players 1 through 5, that they are ever our best lineup. There's always some player that moves the ball a little bit or screens the ball a little bit or cuts at the right time. And that lineup over the course of 100 possessions is plus 15. And this exact lineup with that player's replacement in there, minus 15. Well, which one do you think I'm going to play more? And they're like, well, my kid doesn't. I can't explain it to you. I'm just telling you that this is a fact. So enlist people. You'll be shocked what kind of results, and they will over deliver.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.